Hey guys, it's Tom M from Tabletop Republic here, and I'm here to go through with you another one of my Magic the Gathering decks. This one is a mono-green commander deck, all about big creatures, big stompy things, and basically killing my opponents through brute force. My commander is Goreclaw, Terror of Qal Sisma. It's a 4/3 for 4 mana. Creatures you cast with power 4 or greater cost 2 less. Whenever it attacks, each creature with power 4 or greater gets +1/1 and trample until the end of turn. It is a really big threat on the board because it basically makes all my big stuff too cheaper. And if they don't have trample, it gives them trample until the end of the turn, but only if this attacks. So one of the only problems with this deck is that it sort of requires the commander to properly attack in order to get some of the big boosts. In the deck, I have 22 basic forests. Not as many as my mono blue deck, but I do have a lot of other mana producing ways. I have 7 non-basic lands, so I have Temple of the False God, which is basically the cheap Soul Ring, Castle Garenbrig in case I have a lot of colourless mana and not enough to spend on creatures, Tranquil Thicket, so if I've got too much land I can cycle it to draw a card, Oran Reef the Vastwood, tap to put a 1/1 counter on each green creature that entered the battlefield this turn, Treetop Village, it can become a 3/3/8 with Trample, Fertile Thicket, when it enters the battlefield look at the top 5 cards, if you do reveal a basic land, put that land on top of the library and the rest on bottom. Mosswort Bridge, probably one of my favourite lands. When it enters the battlefield, I look at the top 4 cards, put one of them face down, exiled underneath this card. Then I can pay 1 mana to play the card if I have creatures total power 10 or greater. It's really good for essentially a scry 4. The 3 of them go to the bottom of the library, one of them goes under here, and then power 10 or greater across all creatures is really easy in this deck. Then I have 4 mana artifacts. I've got Heraldic Banner, so all my green creatures get +1/+0 and tap for a mana, one of my favourite cards from Eldraine. Nyx Lotus taps for the devotion of my green. Gilded Lotus, 5 mana, taps for 3 green, and of course I've got to have a Soul Ring in there. Then I have 3 mana search cards, so District Guide, search for a basic land, put it in my hand. The Slightly Better Wood Elves, search for a forest card, put it on the battlefield. And Boundless Realms, search for X basic land, where X is the number of lands I have. So doubles my lands. Then I have 7 things which tap for mana. Got Leafkin Druid, Elysian Caritiad, I think I said that right. Taps for a mana, or if I have a creature power 4 greater, tap for 2. Paradise Druid, taps for a mana and hexproof if untapped. Llanowar Elves, of course, but do you know what's better than 1 Llanowar Elves? Do you know what's better than 2 Llanowar Elves? It's 3 Llanowar Elves. Shaman of the Forgotten Ways is really good. Taps 2 mana in any combination, but I can only cast that on creatures. For 11 mana, each player's life total becomes the number of creatures they control. And I've got to have a great henge in there. Costs X less, where X is the greatest power among creatures. Taps 2 green, where I gain 2 life as well. Every time a non-token creature enters, put a 1/1 counter on that creature and draw a card. Then I have 4 other things that help up mana boost. Frontier Siege, I normally go for the Khan one, where at the beginning of each main phase, get 2 free green mana. Zendikar Resurgent, whenever I tap a land for mana, add another mana, and whenever I cost a creature, draw a card. Double value in there. Growing Rights of Itlamok. When it enters, look at the top 4 cards, reveal a creature, put it in your hand, the rest will go to the bottom. And at the beginning of your end step, if you have 4 or more creatures, transform it into Itlamok Cradle of the Sun. Taps for a green, or taps for a green for each creature you control. And finally, one of my favourite cards from Theros, a Nyxbloom Ancient. If you tap a permanent for mana, it taps for triple. So especially good for the triple Llanowar Elves, who will now tap for 9 mana. I then have 6 cards which give me drawing boosts. Elvish Visionary just comes in, draw a card. Season of Growth, probably one of my favourite cards in the game. When a creature enters, I get to scry, and whenever I cast a spell that targets a creature, draw a card. The first Aronian Games, 4 stages of the saga, create a 1/1 white human soldier, put 3 1/1 counters on a creature. If I control a creature with power 4 or greater, draw 2 cards, and then create a gold token. Colossal Majesty, at the beginning of your upkeep, if you have a creature with power 4 or greater, draw a card. Guardian Project, one of the best commander cards you can get, because when a non-token creature enters the battlefield and you control, if it doesn't have the same name as another creature or you control, or a creature in your graveyard, draw a card. It's Commander, that's very unlikely. And a card that I've only ever got to play once in this deck so far, because it's always hiding at the bottom, but is extremely useful. Abundance. If you would just draw a card, either choose land or non-land, reveal cards until you reveal whatever you chose, put all others at the bottom of the library, and put the other one in your hand. So if you're running out of land, choose land. If you've got too much land, just choose non-land. Then I have 2 randoms or 1 cards, 1 gain a life card, which is Feed the Clan, either gain 5 life, or if I creature with power 4 or more, gain 10 life. And Wildwood Rebirth, return target creature from your graveyard to your hand. Don't have a lot of graveyard recovery on this, but I have lots of creatures to choose as alternatives in case they do die. Then I have 7 destruction and preventing cards. Quite a lot because a lot of people target me with this deck. First up, Rabid Bite. One of my big creatures attacks a tiny creature that they control. Reclaiming Vines, destroy artifact, enchantment, or land. Beast Within, destroy a permanent and create a 3/3 beast. Dissenter's Deliverance, destroy an artifact or cycle to draw a card. Whip-Tongue Hydra, it's a 4/4 with reach. When it enters the battlefield, destroy all creatures with flying, and then put a 1/1 counter on this creature for each creature destroyed that way. Perfect if it's up against one of those token decks that gets 50 Pegasus on the board. Avoid Fate, one of the very few green counters. Counter target instant or aura that targets permanent for 1 green mana, so it's very useful. And Thunderstaff, as long as it's untapped, if a creature would deal combat damage to you, prevent 1 of that damage. If they have 50 1/1 flyers coming at me, all that damage is prevented. Then I have 8 smaller creatures which either boost themselves up or help boost other creatures. Got Wildborn Preserver. Whenever I draw this card, it always seems to be bad luck, so I always have a really bad game if this is out on the board. Destiny Spinner to stop all my creatures being countered. And also you can create elemental land. Crunch Wrangler, really cheap 2/1 with trample, and then whenever a big creature enters, put a 1/1 counter on it. Crashing Drawbridge, give my creatures haste. Hex Drinker, so if I have mana spare during my turn, I could just let it level up and gain protection. Ravenous Slime is a really good card. It's a 1/1, can't be blocked by creatures with power 2 or less. If an opponent's creature would die, it's exiled instead, and whatever the power was, put that many 1/1 counters on it. So if I manage to destroy one of their... Well, I don't even need to destroy it. If one of their creatures is destroyed by something, this gets bigger. Speaking of counters, Forgotten Ancient. Whenever a player plays a spell, put a 1/1 counter on it, and during your upkeep you can move those 1/1 counters to other creatures. And one of the most underrated cards on my deck, Elvish Piper. 1 mana, tap, put a creature card from your hand onto the battlefield. Next up, I have 10 boost cards. Sight of the Scale Lords. Beginning of combat, each creature with toughness 4 or more gets +2/2 and vigilance. Ronas's Monument. Green creatures cost 1 less. Whenever I cast a creature spell, target creature gets +2/2 and trample. Blanchwood Armor. Enchanted creature gets +1/1 for each forest. Haunted Cloak. Enchanted creature has vigilance, trample, and haste. Of course, I've got to have a Lightning Greaves to give myself some protection. Bow of Nylea. All my attacking creatures have Death Touch. Then for 2 mana, I can either put a 1/1 counter on a creature, or it deals 2 damage to a creature with flying, or I gain 3 life. Or put 4 target cards from your graveyard on the bottom of my library. Renata, Call to the Hunt. Power is equal to the devotion, so it's at least 2. And each creature enters with an additional 1/1 counter on it, similar to the Great Henge. Brawn, which I want to die because if it's in the graveyard and I control a forest, which is very likely, all my creatures have trample, as long as this is in my graveyard. Hydra's Growth, which is in so many of my decks now. When it enters, put a 1/1 counter on the enchanted creature, and at the beginning of upkeep, double the number of 1/1 counters. Inquisitor's Flail is a very hit or miss card. The equipped creature deals double combat damage, but it takes double combat damage too. Then we get onto the big things. I have 16 big creatures in the deck. Got Colonian Twin Grove. Power and toughness is equal to the number of forests I control, so it could be up to 22. When it enters, correct copy of it essentially. Stalhand Champion. This is Stillleaf Champion, just German. I accidentally got sent a German version of it. Can't be blocked by creatures power 2 or less. Surak the Hunt Caller. At the beginning of combat, if you have creatures with power 8 or greater, a creature gains haste. Voracious Hydra, really good in the middle of the game, where I could either destroy a creature or double the amount of 1/1 counters to get a bigger threat with trample. Moldgraph Monstrosity is an 8/8 with trample. When it dies, exile it and return 2 random creature cards from your graveyard to the battlefield. Could be really good, could be like an Elvish Visionary, which gives me to draw an extra card, or one of my mana pumping creatures. Or it could be even better if it's one of these big creatures, such as Oran Roof Hydra, 5/5 with trample, it's got landfall, and if the land is a forest, double landfall. Gaia's Revenge can't be countered, can't be targeted, and it's got haste. Vigor, it's a 6/6 trample. If damage were to be dealt to a creature other than Vigor, prevent it and put 1/1 counter for each 1 damage prevented that way. Basically makes all my creatures indestructible unless I block with Vigor. Hydra Omnivore, if it deals combat damage to every other opponent. Got to have an Eldrazi in a big creature deck. Artisan of Kozilek, when you cast a spell you may return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. It's okay, it needs haste, so I can either put a Crashing Drawbridge on there, or I can hope for a creature like End-Raze Forerunners to turn up, which it will in a bit. And it's also got Annihilator 2. When this creature attacks, defending player sacrifices 2 permanents. Nylea Keen-Eyed, very similar to Goreclaw, the commander. It's a 5/6 indestructible. Creature spells cost 1 less, and I can pay 3. Reveal the top card. If it's a creature, put it in your hand, otherwise you may put it in the graveyard. One of my favourite cards in the game, Ghalta Primal Hunger. Costs X less, where X is the total power of creatures, 12/12 trample, and I've got the Store Championship artwork version. It is gorgeous. The Pain Bacon, End-Raze Forerunners, 7/7, Vigilance, Trample, Haste. When it enters, other creatures +2/2, Vigilance and Trample. Giant Adderphage, when it deals combat damage, create a token of it. Golaton or Ronas, 5/5 Death Touch. When it enters, double the power of each other creature you control, and they gain Vigilance. Amazing end game destruction plays. And if it dies, I can put it third from the top to do it again in 3 turns' time. And wouldn't be a big creature deck without the biggest creature in the game. 16/16, Convoke, indestructible, for 10 mana. I hardly have ever played it for the 10 mana. I have other ways of cheating it out onto the board. Then we get to the final 3 cards in the deck, which basically make this one of the best decks I own. Seedborn Muse, untap all permanents you control during each other player's untap phase. These creatures don't have Vigilance. This makes them, pretty much. Sylvala's Stampede, one of the brand new ones that I've got. It's done with you. Everyone votes for wild or free. Reveal creatures from the top of the library until you reveal a creature card for each wild vote. Put those creatures onto the battlefield, then shuffle your library. And for each free vote, put a permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield. So most people will vote free if I don't have a lot of cards in my hand. However, I at least get to vote for wild, so the top card gets randomly put on. And finally, the card which helps bring out all the big creatures, Natural Order. I sacrifice a green creature for 4 mana and search for a green creature and put it on the battlefield. It's amazing for getting out the big creatures without having to pay their mana costs. I can just sack a mana searching elf and get the big creature straight out the bat. Managed to get this out turn 4, which makes this deck really fun to play with. Not so much for the opponents, definitely for me. So anyway, that's my mono green big stompy deck. Goreclaw at the helm, helping me get a bunch of cheap creatures out. Other cards like Natural Order and the Seedborn Muse to make it really difficult to get rid of me. Bunch of mana pump to get the big creatures out. And a few little buffs to help either the smaller or bigger creatures become even better than they currently are. Let me know if you think of any cards that would be good in this deck. I think this is probably one of my most competitive decks that I play with. A lot of people, as soon as I bring it out, put away whatever deck they were going to play with and bring out their more competitive decks. Hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll see you at Tabletop Republic.